Hey everyone, before we get started with this next episode, I want to give a quick shout out to Seth Roy of North Mountain Goshawks for continuing to support the podcast. And for those of you that are going to be in the market, particularly for a parent-reared goshawk, whether it be a Finnish, Russian, or North American goshawk in which eggs are hatching now, you definitely want to hit Seth up and get on that list. Time's running out. Birds are hatching, so don't wait. Hit Seth up at ostringer3@gmail.com, or you can fill out the form at northmountaingoshawks.com, or send them a message on Facebook at North Mountain Goshawks and tell them we sent you. I also wanted to make everyone aware of a new memorial fund that has recently been started in memory of one of the falconry community's greatly missed members, being Doug Pinio. And for those that knew Doug, they knew that Doug understood the importance of mentoring the next generation of hunter conservationists. And to that end, and with the support of the Pinio family, the Pinio Memorial Fund was born. And the Pinio Memorial Fund's mission is to encourage active and ethical participation in falconry, fishing, and a love for the outdoors through scholarships for young adults and newcomers. With your support, the PMF aims to engage the next generation by fostering opportunities for newcomers and young adults to experience and appreciate the wonders of nature. Through mentored recreational and educational experiences, as well as financial support, they strive to ensure that Doug's outdoor legacy lives on. To help support Doug's vision, please visit www.n-a-f-a.com/Pinio Memorial. Now, on to this next episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast.
She rang up, I forget, something over like 900 feet, and we got in there, got into the grouse and bumped them, and the group, I think it was about 10 birds, left, and she was on her way down. She was in great position, and you could hear the stoop, and one boomer got up, I don't know, 4 seconds after the rest of them. He had waited behind, and she was coming down, and she switched targets from the group to that thing, and she smashed that thing out of the sky like 25 feet in front of all of us.
They were walking in the field, and there were, I swear, thousands of grouse getting up. It was just constantly getting up, and she just kept remounting and remounting and remounting. And then I watched from a hill as she did like the peregrine stoop and scoop. I think she's up around 400 feet, not some super impressive height, but you know what? That was my bird that I shaped and I raised. And she goes up, and she, stooped down, came up, scoop and stoop and scoop, as you call it, grabbed and just bounded that grouse and held it.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast, and this is kind of another one of those slightly change-up feel kind of episodes. I recorded 2 separate episodes with husband and wife duo Jeff and Lauren Reddig. Been friends with them for several years now, and it's not very often that I get a chance to see them, although in recent years it's been a little bit more numerous with my chance to kind of go out west and work and everything. And I got a chance to sit down with Jeff and finally wrangle him into recording an episode at the last NAFA meet. And then while I was in Wyoming, I got a chance to meet up with both of them again while I was recording several episodes with Wyoming falconers, and had a chance to snag Lauren for a little bit and talk to her some. So I went ahead and combined both of those separate episodes into this one longer episode, switched things up a little bit for you all, and hope you enjoy it. So all that being said, we talk about a lot of different things in these episodes, ranging from the tragedies of falconry and the hardships of it to kind of the dynamics of our community and so on and so forth. So all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to these conversations that I had with Jeff and Lauren Reddig. Here we go.
Yeah, I didn't know that though about Genghis Khan. The whole why I thought, didn't he hunt with golden eagles though?
I think he hunted with a lot of stuff. He was Genghis Khan. He's had I forget the century, but he was what do they say? How much of the world's population has his genetics in it?
Wasn't it like, I can't remember. I want to say it was like 10%.
It's way more significant than you would think.
Yeah, but maybe I'm way off on that.
I mean, he kind of was the original I do what I want kind of thing. So
yeah, he was the original Cartman.
there you go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was the original Cartman, and yeah, no, I think out of all the figures in history, I mean, there's maybe a handful that are like him that are just really interesting, kind of perplexing in a way, but yeah, the dude was he was a beast, that's for sure. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I knew that he had hunts with like golden eagles and stuff, because I remember reading or hearing stories about how there's artwork and stuff that people found was just like him and like a bunch of other people on horseback lined up with just like golden eagles on, whatever. And could only imagine how that worked out.
You could do a whole podcast series on history of falconry and artwork and everything. It could be its own. What is, there's a really interesting history podcast out there, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now.
Well, because it's not like there's not that many podcasts, especially those based around history.
Right. Well, no, there's one in particular where the guy goes unbelievably in depth on his research, and not Dan Flores.
I know which one you're talking about, but the last thing I need right now is another podcast to keep track of. I barely keep up with the ones that I can. But
his model is pretty interesting, and I mean, I haven't listened to it in a year or more, but I'll have to find it, because the way that he does the research and the storytelling, and if that same model was applied to the history of falconry, I mean, he's going off human history and telling stories of the last couple hundred years that are interesting.
Yeah.
And if somebody, you could get, what you could do is get somebody like, hey, Frank Taylor, are you listening to this? Frank is a walking historian of all these things, and it would be interesting to hear that.
I think Israel did a podcast with him at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, early on.
Yeah, early on.
That was the same, what was it, Kansas falconry meet? I think my dad, that's where he got my dad too.
Right,
so.
Right, yeah, it was one of the ones he did in NAFA. Yeah. Yeah, man, it seems, and it's kind of funny because I was talking to Jenny about that earlier today whenever I was talking with her. I mean, it seems funny that was like 4 years ago already. And I was like,
it seems like it was in another universe.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even really know each other then, believe it or not. And I had just barely kind of gotten reacquainted and reintroduced with Lauren at that point too, I think. And like, yeah, I mean, it's funny to see how things change and progress in such a seemingly short amount of time. But I mean, this is going on 5 years that I've been doing this specifically. And yeah, man, there was I remember doing a lot of recordings during that one too. And yeah, this is like number 6, I think, for just the 2 days that I've been here for this one. So
sure.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers, brother. We've had some good fun over the last couple of years.
Yes, we have.
We'll have a lot more.
Yes, we have. And for those listening, this is kind of an ongoing joke. Mr. Rettig here is finally within my clutches. He's one of the ones that has evaded my grasp. He slipped through my fingers for the last 4 years conveniently.
Not for a lack of time hanging out and going fishing and going to concerts and everything, but
yeah, it's not like the opportunities weren't there, but he took some coaxing, but we're finally having this conversation, and yeah, man, no, it's been fun for sure. The last few years have been interesting, but yeah. So I mean, as far as go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the the stuff that you've been dealing with recently, because one of the kind of recurring themes that I like to go over here on the podcast is people need to hear. I think over and over again about some of the BS that we have to deal with and things, and some of the, the hoops and hurdles that we have to go through. Because I think whenever people initially get into falconry or thinking about getting into falconry, like they have this romanticized notion a lot of times. And I don't think people can hear enough about some of the drama and some of the
nitty gritty.
Yes. Yeah. We have to go through. So, especially about, your Jerkin and stuff. I mean, your Jerlin, I should say.
Oh, well, Jerlin, yeah. I mean, it's just been it's been a busy season. It started in even back in May with this idea of doing a hack, and my wife and I wanted to get. We've got a couple female falcons that are imprinted, and at the age that they're at, she's been getting semen from other people, and so that sounded horrible. Sorry, babe. Bird. Yeah. Anyway, donations, and we just want to be able to have our own stuff. So we're going to raise a dark jerkin this year, and have him as a future semen donor. And so we got him, and then we had a hack for some dedicated falconry birds, and so we got four jeers from Jim Robeson at Deer Farm, and we ended up so we hand fed and raised a dark jerkin. She hand fed and raised her goshawk from Keith Hicks this year, Iceman, and the jerkin's name is Toothless. And then the 4 jeers for the hack, and it turned into, you have ideas about what you're getting into and what you think it will be. And I've been lucky enough since I was a teenager to do tame hacks and things like that with quite a number of birds, and been a part of a couple of really special ones, and feel like I know what I'm doing, and come to realize that standing out and doing it on my own, how much framework was put in place by the people that I was doing the other hacks with, and how much it really takes. Mm-hmm. And we got through it, and we had one. It was a lot of work. I mean, it was just an insane amount of work, and but it was an incredible experience at the same time. I mean, I have a traveling job, so every week I had to go somewhere, and Lauren was absolutely, magical about doing her job remotely. We had our camper parked out in the desert, and she can work from the computer there, and I would leave for a day and a half or 2 days at most, and she would hold down the fort with all the birds, and running home to take care of all the animals at the house, driving across the lava-ridden rocky 2 tracks out there and dusty, we're easing into the hot part of the summer, and everything is just a dust bowl. And we ended up with about 6 weeks of birds on the wing, and got to see them partially develop, not as much as we would have liked. There's some conditions and things that we just didn't really understand or expect would go down. And at the end of it all the birds were alive at the end of the hack, and everybody's okay. But one of the jerkins, of course, the one that I thought I was going to fly that I liked the most, he got really sick, and we spent a few weeks after the hack trying to save him, and we couldn't. And that was an unbelievable amount of work, just trying to keep him alive. And, I had to go on a work trip for I think I had to be gone for like 6 days, and Lauren by herself at home was casting and tube feeding this bird and keeping him alive while we tried to figure out what was wrong with him, and we never could get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And so we put him down and decided to keep the other jerkin, which I'm flying now, and he was the best flying bird at the hack, but he was the least likable bird at the hack. And he was tenacious, but he was spooky, and he killed the most stuff, most bag stuff, most pigeons. It got to the point with him that I couldn't even throw my homers. He'd course them around in a huge circle in 3-4 minutes of just dogging them until they decided to bail. And he was very tenacious, and that translated. We never could approach him. It was hard to get him fed. We kind of tried to maintain a rule of everybody has to come and get their food from the fist every day. So we were maintaining that relationship. So it wasn't a full wild hack. It was a tame hack, and kind of a modified 4-week window. And it translated kind of how I thought it would when I ended up trying to tame this bird and fly it this fall. It was 6 weeks of just brutal handling and relationship with him, but we broke through it. So
yeah. And then you eventually had, some other issues that you had to deal with him too, right?
Yeah. I mean, he, everything was going great in August, late August and September. We were doing all the basic training stuff and getting him on the drone and flying. And he was very quickly spectacular. I mean, all of his skills that he learned at the hack. I mean, we had days out there with 50-mile-an-hour winds and higher, and these guys would just cruise around in it and play in it and stuff. And all of those skills transferred. And when it came to chasing a wing or flying to the drone or throwing pigeons or whatever, he was just engaged and very, very tenacious and very eager to fly. And he's only he's flying right now maybe 60 grams lower than his capture weight from the hack, which he started responding a couple ounces below that, but we built it back up. And his wing beat before we had problems with his feathers was unbelievable. I haven't had a long wing that climbs, that has just the outright power that he has. And I know Gyrs are known for that, and I've raised some other Gyrs, but it's different with him. And then in October, everything was going really well. Transitioning him off the toys, starting to throw bags for him, starting to think about hunting him as duck season came in. And, HPI was kind of unknown. And he got really, really sick. And he just turned off one day. And we were, I was within like 3 days of just abandoning the toys and just going hunting with him. And over the course of that week, we targeted the preventive things that we can do. So we did worm treatment and coxy treatment and started Monasper because that's just what they get. And,
Sure.
Gyrs and goshawks spend their lives looking for ways to die that shouldn't kill them. So you better be ready. Mm-hmm. And he turned around from that pretty quick. In hindsight, we didn't really know what was going on though. And then during a lot of the handling, trying to figure out what was wrong with him and stuff like that, during the initial 6 weeks of taming him, he was really, really tough, baiting a lot. I mean, to this day, he barely regains the glove from a bait. It's just one of his little anomalies, And the result of that has been he tattered his wingtips really bad. And they just kind of started wearing down a little bit at a time. And over the course of the handling when he was sick, they started to fray off pretty bad. And then so we transitioned from he's sick and he didn't want to fly to... we figured out eventually was he couldn't fly. And, coming off of him being as sick as he was, it was really funny because, it was funny. It was brutal. I mean, I got thousands of dollars in vet bills trying to figure out what was wrong with him, which we never got to the bottom of until a couple weeks later. I'll get to that. But, he literally couldn't fly. He had lost enough of his primary tips. And so having come off being sick, though, you can't help but think like there's still something wrong, and not knowing that was the physical ailment he was fighting with for how eager he was to fly. And Lauren was kind of the one that highlighted that when she saw him. She hadn't seen him fly for a while, and she came out and watched and saw what I was dealing with, and she kind of called it out, which was pretty cool because I was just too in it to see it. And so we did the legwork and found a clinic and had the feathers from Bandit, the one that died at the end of the hack, and we amped 5 feathers on each wing, and that in itself was pretty difficult because 30 or so minutes into the anesthesia time, he started having really variable breathing and heart rate, and they were really nervous about him being down any longer. So the first wing was really nice, and the second wing got rushed really bad, and it's a little shorter. And as a friend of mine pointed out, he's like, Gyrs are known for tail chasing, but this is kind of an extreme method of keeping him from doing that. And, it turns out that it is actually a byproduct of this, is that he does not have the horizontal speed that he should. But at any rate, he got his wings back, and we were back to flying like crazy. And his eagerness and everything that he had was still there. His brain was still really well intact after a month of trying to go through all this. And I was pretty surprised that we didn't mess that up somehow. And when we got all done with all that, we started droning him again. And this is the full circle on that story, was that I went to get some more bagged pheasants from this pheasant farm. And the guy that I get birds from, he was like, "Oh, I need to tell you this. You feed those birds, don't you, to your birds?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, we had a client cut open a pheasant to eat it, and it was full of worms. And so they took some of their pheasants and had them tested, and they had intestinal worms, and they also had an infection of a parasite in their throat. So when the roosters would go to call, it's like this raspy thing due to the growth in their throat. And so they were prescribed with ivermectin and one other worm treatment for their whole pheasant farm. And I think he had eaten 3 pheasants, 3 bags from that farm in the 10 days prior to getting sick. So I think it's pretty likely that he just had a pretty bad worm infestation. And that was one of the things I treated the first week, like preventively, like we're just going to get this off the table. And so that's why he had kind of bounced back pretty quick, but we didn't really realize it because of the crossing with his wingtips and stuff. And so anyway, that was a interesting find that we had. But he went right back into flying and training and transitioning off the toys. And right before the NAF meet here, he caught his first wild-headed game. It was a good flight for a baby bird, and I was lucky that it was a baby grouse. A pretty late one.
Yeah.
And he's, it's probably been 2 weeks, 10 days now that we're no toys and just hunting and shaping flying behavior. And I've had some good days, some bad days, and he's young, but it's a lot of fun, and he's just a really nice bird. So I have to give my wife credit for helping get him tame, and kind of her, insight from the outside helpful, and get through all this with her. So
yeah, and that's why I think that it always helps to get. I mean, sometimes as much as we don't necessarily want to hear it, it's helpful to have like a group of buddies that you consistently, or in your case, a wife too, that you can consistently go out with and get an outside looking in perspective. Because sometimes, like you just said, you get so caught up in your own BS, you know what I mean? Like, and you're looking for other things because you've already, for some reason or another, mentally ruled out something else, but that could easily be, and you're just not seeing it. Just because you're so used to seeing it every day,
Yeah. I've got a pretty great crew of friends and stuff, and know a lot of people in the falconry world. I'm pretty lucky for all that. And obviously I have my dad in my corner, and lots of consultations with him, and, he's retired, but I drag him out of that, keep him on his toes, and last couple of years have been pretty rough in falconry. I had some pretty good birds in the 2010 years, and had some really good flying, and it seems like since the last one died in 2018 of that setup, it's been just a battle to get back to having good birds and good seasons, and every year's a building year. And I had a couple good seasons with a female deer that I raised, and I like her a lot, and she's hopefully going to be a breeder. And but it's stressful, just the eagle threat of flying a bird like that, and it almost sucked the fun out of it, And to what were we talking about earlier, where when we started this thing off, and perspective and all of this stuff, and there's, I'm mid 40s and been doing falconry since I was a little kid, and I always joke around that I was forced into it at birth and not given the choice. And it kind of feels that way sometimes, but you still end up walking around with imposter syndrome. And no matter how much experience you have, you just wonder. I always wonder if my dad wasn't a falconer, would I be one?
Yeah.
Right. Like if it wasn't in my house as a kid, if it wasn't something that was a constant in this world. I mean, we're sitting here at we're in Kearney, Nebraska right now at the NAFA meet recording this. And my first NAFA meet was 1986 in Kearney when I was 6 years old. And I was convinced I had to have the right shoes, but I could catch a jackrabbit.
Yeah.
And, but the perspective of all that and the time and practice in it, and getting so far down these rabbit holes of what you want to do in falconry and this personal pursuit that it is, I've got an apprentice right now that is somebody who has wanted to do falconry since the age that I have been into it. And it's 30 years down the road for her, and she's doing it. And she's got this Tiercel redtail that is nothing short of spectacular. The dude will go out to fly him, put him up in a tree, start beating around. We really don't have rabbits where we live at all, like other places do. You find your train tracks in the thick cover, and you beat through it, and you get bunnies out, not there. And he's a good bird, though, and she picked a redtail just because she knows they're durable. It's a good choice, and teach her what she needs to know as fundamentals. And we just have a lot of cold and snow, especially over where she lives. And the pure simplicity and innocence that I am watching her find, and the enjoyment of this wild creature that she trains. And this little Tiercel is a flying machine. He takes off into soars. He goes up 2,000 feet and stays up for an hour and a half. and he's been 2,000 feet high and 2 miles wide, and swing the lure, and he doesn't come down, but he just comes back over. And an hour and 10 minutes later, he comes back down, lands in the tree that he started in. And he's like, throw the lure out, and he comes down. And he's like, where you been? And it's been an incredible, almost a slap in the face, of a reminder of like how amazing this is. And
Yeah.
I'm to your point earlier of being down the rabbit hole so far.
Yeah.
Like I kind of have almost forgotten that this is supposed to be fun. And
Right.
there's these goals I have that I'm trying to pursue in this sport. And I grew up, I kind of talked about this in my director's report, but I mean, I grew up in falconry, getting to see a lot of great falconry at the NAFA meets, and because of my dad's connections, the friends he had and everything like that, I got to see some pretty spectacular stuff. But it was in game situations and environments that don't exist today. And, you know, I had this idea as a kid and getting older about, that's what I'm going to do someday. I'm going to get there. That's the falconry I want to practice. And I don't think those times will ever exist again. And the amount of work it takes to, you know, there's few places that can recreate the situations that were, and the constant inundation of people and everything that's happening everywhere, and declining populations. And I don't know. The future is tough to look at.
Yeah, and I've talked about that a lot recently, you know, with different people.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of which was the conversations that I just had here within the last day or two. And yeah, I don't know what the solution is. You know, we always joke, and I'm sure you probably joked to some degree too, about to the same extent with other people, that like, you know, if people don't like, you know, hawking starlings and squirrels, then they might as well go ahead and
Quit.
Yeah, start, you know,
Yeah.
prepping yourself now for it, because
Yeah.
eventually that's probably all we're going to have. But yeah, I mean,
The squeeze just keeps getting tighter.
yeah. And once again, that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, especially because, you know, we've, you know, kept in fairly close contact the last few years. I know a bunch of the stuff that you've gone through, and you know a bunch of stuff that I've gone through the last few years too.
For sure.
And so it's like, you know, there's always this constant balancing act between juice and squeeze.
100%.
And it's like, you know, for people that really want to continue to think about getting into this, you know, there's a lot of considerations even that are different now that even were, I think, kind of whenever, I mean, just a short amount of time ago that even I got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, it has been alarming just seeing like how many spots we've even lost within the last 8 years. And, you know, all these different things and adversity and everything else. And I mean, all that you just described, that was one short amount of time, like a 2-month window or whatever, with one bird.
Yep. And that doesn't even account for the 5 other birds that I've been dealing with in that time.
Exactly.
You know?
And I mean, like I mentioned, the Gearlin.
Yeah.
You know, the Gear Merlin hybrid that you have, for those, you know, listening that doesn't know what a Gearlin is. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, the issues that you had with that bird recently.
Yeah. I mean, I got him a little over a year ago, and neat little bird opportunity to get him. And he was 2 years old, 3rd season last year. And, you know, got through training him and had him come to the lure, and just kind of curious. There's some people like Simone Cook, and she had a Gearlin years ago that she posted a lot of stuff about, and he was just kind of inspiring about what's possible, and just a neat little bird. And I always comment like Gearlins, Pearlins, and I'm not, on one hand, I'm not a big hybrid fan, but on the other hand, there's some pretty neat hybrids out there, and I've flown some good ones, and I appreciate everything about what they can do. Mm-hmm. I have an idea, you know, native birds on native quarry kind of thing that I like to see. And so, but, you know, there's voids in all of that too, and the Gearlin kind of fills an interesting one. And so I flew him last year, and I don't know what to call what I saw with him last year. It was fits or seizures of some kind. And, you know, we work hard to feed our birds well, between trapping starlings and shooting collar doves and good food and things like that, and supplement, you know, Vitahawk or whatever we're using. But he would go fly really, really hard. And I mean, he would be out chasing a starling or doing something like that, or a drone flight, and he would just kind of stoop for the ground almost. And I'd get over there, and he would be kind of tipsy and tipping around and stuff, and never really understood what it was. Nothing was obvious about food or weight or anything else that caused it. And obviously it's a yearling. I mean, the biggest and the second smallest, and throw the genetics and have a party, and you don't know what you get. Maybe he's got a small heart. You know, who knows what other problems these things could have. And then he got grabbed last fall. He was flying pretty good, and we were just trying stuff out, and I was hoping to fly hunts with him and things like that. And he got grabbed first by a red tail on like the third time I tried hunting him. And he lived by diving into the bottom of this wretchedly thick bush and just hiding. He was screaming while this red tail was coming in from the top trying to get him. And he got grabbed in one wing and increased some primaries. And then within 2 weeks, he got, it was a rough leg, I think. Might have been a marsh hawk. I can't remember. But, you know, the way he looks in the air and the way he flies, like everything in the valley is like, oh my God, you see that little thing? Like, doesn't look like anything else.
Must eat it.
Must eat. And I mean, I can't, this fall, I haven't been able to fly him without a marsh hawk or a couple marsh hawks showing up. And if he's on the ground, they're dogging him, you know? Mm-hmm. It's just kind of been annoying. And it, you know, that the eagles suck the fun out of flying the big falcons, and marsh hawks suck the fun out of flying the little dudes. You know, I'm just waiting for the day that a female prairie shows up and decides he's dinner, because he's in trouble. Thankfully, the marsh hawks are they strafe him and they harass him. But anyway, he got grabbed by another bird. The same wing that had creased feathers broke off like 5 of the primaries, and I didn't get them all back, and they were just really messed up. And so we put him up and early molted him, and he's an easy keeper and nice bird. That way, easy to handle. And so we molted him, and then this fall started working with him again. And then I was flying him, starting to really explore what he can do flying, and lots of drone flights, lots of fitness, just trying to promote that and pumping lots of food through him. He flies at 350 grams or so, eats like 85 or 90 grams of food a day. I mean, I've seen 1,200 gram goshawks and stuff that don't eat that much every day, you know. And you know, the Merlin is strong in him, so to speak. And he's kind of, mostly he's like a big Merlin. He's got pretty long legs, pretty long toes, pretty skinny toes. Everybody's like, oh, perfect Hun hawk. And I'm like, a Hun's built a lot heavier than he is. Bone density, bone diameters. Like, I mean, it's going to be a stoop and scoop game or a binding game. I don't think there's a world that he's going to hit Huns and really do any damage to them. So, but at any rate, you know, a couple months of flying him this year, and maybe 3 days before the NAFA meet or 4 days before the NAFA meet, we went to do an exercising training flight on the drone, and he circled and came and landed on my friend's truck, and wing was kind of stuck up and waffling in the wind a little bit in the breezy day, and he just got blown off the top of the truck and couldn't even stand up on the ground, and he had another one of these fits or seizures, and then he just proceeded to have a handful more on the way down here. So, you know, a year of waiting and a couple months of work, and definitely starting to enter him. And I've had some hunt flights with him, and I was looking for stuff to chase with him and things like that, and lots of pigeons and all the work that goes into getting kill pigeons going and netting them at night and stuff like that and prepping for it. And all of a sudden he's having seizures. And then on the drive down here to the NAFA meet, he had a really big one in the box. Opened the door, and he had like his head wedged under the perch, and wings. Let's see here. He had 2 tip primaries, 3 broken tail feathers. My dad and I actually just wrapped them up and fixed those all yesterday. I had all the pieces, thankfully. But he went from being feather perfect and thinking that we have all this exploratory fun to have to see where he fits in the niche of what we're doing and what's possible where I live. And now it's like, okay, well, he's having seizures a lot. He's had like 5 of them since we got here, and I don't even know what to do with them. And I've had some good friends and people reach out with what they've done with seizure birds in the past, and between Vitahawk and selenium, and I guess quail eggs are high in it, and try to supplement his diet with that to keep him at bay. And then, you know, there's on one hand, it's like, if he's fighting all this stuff and everything's just difficult and it's been a battle for over a year, you know, I kind of feel like maybe just put him down and say, enough is enough, and stop torturing myself and him. And on the other hand, it's like, well, if you're going to put him down anyway, fly him. Yeah. Goes out with his boots on maybe, and you might learn something. So, you know, we're just getting into the winter season in Idaho, and lots of flocks of starlings, and we've got feedlots around, and maybe we just see what happens there. So anyway, so that's that battle.
Yeah. And it's never ending.
That's all in the coattails of that Goshawk Mini that I had.
Mhm.
You know, she hurt her leg. I don't even know how, but she ripped her whole front leg open, and we spent the last, 20 months trying to heal that. All 2 summers ago was casting her every other day for the whole summer to treat her leg with wound gel. Seemed to come back pretty well. And then last spring, she re-injured it, ripped the leg open again, went through this whole summer doing the same stuff. But this year she was hormonal, and she's an imprint, and the combination of a hormonal imprint goshawk that doesn't like you that much and that you have to cast and treat a leg on, and it just kind of soured the relationship, and she moved on to a breeder now. But it's been a battle.
Yeah.
And she was a good game hawk a couple seasons before. She had a really diverse head or game bag, and you know, she was good when she was on for falconry. She was pretty incredible, actually. But I got tired of getting grabbed. Just my hands show the scars and the evidence of that bird for the last 2 years, and I am over it.
Yeah.
So
For everyone listening that is not yet into falconry, and
even if you're in it,
yeah,
you just, I mean, you know, between, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, and I'm not complaining at all, but I mean, I got a freezer full of bodies from the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, I got like 9 birds that I've had stuff happen to. I didn't have 9 birds have problems like this in the previous 25 years.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
It wears out your heart.
For sure. And, you know, I mean, that's why, you know, like I've had this debate many times with other people, and you know, that's why I know for me, I almost think it was just as much of a blessing as or curse as a blessing, that having like early success and not really having like much diversity with the first few birds that I tried to fly.
Sure.
I mean, sure, there were issues, but you know, success mixed with issues that are easily kind of solved.
Yeah,
issues.
they smooth out real easy without being big speed bumps.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't prepare you as well
Sure.
for whenever you have that inevitable, and it is inevitable. You will have it.
Yeah.
A string of just crap, you
Yeah.
know, and there really, it seems like for a while, there's literally like no end in sight.
Yeah.
And I really almost wish that I would have had a little bit more adversity.
Yeah.
The first like 2 or 3 birds that I had,
Yeah.
so that when I got the good stuff happen, you
Right.
know, later, that it would have been like, I would have been able to appreciate it more,
Sure.
because
Well,
it's tough, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I mean, I've heard people of my dad's generation talk about how they have they've done a lot of different falconry. They've raised imprints, they've done all these things, and they have all these birds that are nice to handle. Sure, you know, some bad habits here and there, who knows. But they've reserved themselves to going and flying passage birds and kind of flying them on the edge of wild. And it's because they don't want to get that emotional bond with the bird. They're like, literally, like, I just have to learn that I need to protect my heart from connecting with these birds. I want to see all the cool stuff. I mean, falconry is, you know, it's really, what was the book from, was it Ken Filkins, The Sophisticated Form of Bird Watching or something like that? It's a great description of falconry.
Yeah.
And, you know, we want a front row seat to the coolest show in nature. And, but man, you know, keeping a little buffer there might be healthy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm very fortunate that I have a great support team in my life, from my wife to my dad, and I have access to the best medicine possible on the planet, and I will spend the money to take care of these birds. I take them on, and I'm very serious about the fact that they're in my care, and I'm responsible for them, and I will spend the money. And God, sometimes it doesn't make any difference. I mean, I had a goshawk a couple years ago that was sick, and couldn't figure out why. And I don't know, 2 months trying to figure out why. everybody's throwing out the usual Asper and all the, latent Asper, slow onset. It's just crawling around in there, getting worse, and da-da-da-da-da. And she had a squinty eye and some weird traits of sneezing and throwing her head all the time, and we just could not figure it out. And I finally went down to a clinic that had a CT scanner, and I dropped, CT scan was $1,200 on top of all the anesthesia and support for having it done. And we found a humerus bone from a sparrow lodged from the roof of her mouth up that nasal passage into her the back of her eye cavity. So we found it, found the problem we'd been fighting. I had spent a lot of time and money already not flying this bird, keeping her alive, trying to solve this problem. Do the CT scan. She dies recovering on the table from anesthesia. $2,300 vet bill, dead bird. So, it's, you just got to move on.
Yeah.
I think anybody else, if they knew all the details, would looking at this and just think it's a complete insanity at times. So,
yeah, sure. Yeah. And there's no, like I said, there's no end in sight of the possibilities of what you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's just, I think there's a lot to be said for, I don't fault people at all that just stick to like passage birds or whatever, and if something looks like it's not going to work out, hurry up and turn it loose, and and in the case of, the passage birds, I mean, odds are there was a 75% chance, that that it wasn't going to probably work out anyway in the wild period, let alone with you, so.
Well, the number of times you catch a wild bird, I don't know for other people, but I have stumbled into a lot of birds that I've trapped over the years that sick or injured and barely surviving, and check them out and okay, you need to go to the rehab center, and it's been a lot, so more than I would think.
Yeah.
So but it's not all bad either. This is all a lot of hard work, and you got to get back on the horse, and this is what we do. And I don't know any other way. I don't see my life without falconry, no matter how hard it gets. And, you keep adapting and learning, and things aren't, it's great to learn what things actually are versus what you think they'll be. And the only way you get that is if you do it.
Sure.
And you do it all the way.
Yep.
And you give it everything. And, it's like flying Cooper's Hawks when I used to live in Minnesota and thinking, oh, there's little birds everywhere. This will be amazing. And flew a passage male for 4 years. That was pretty incredible. One of the best experiences of my falconry career. And early caught male that was just, he was desperate for life. And I mean, it was just like the first night he took a bath in front of me to drink and stuff like that. And it meant, he trained really well. It was 11 or 12 days he was catching stuff already. And, but at the end of the 4 years when I released him, the number of things that actually worked, like driving around the area I lived, and when I started with him and what I thought I would do with him versus like the 3 fields out of a giant metropolis of Minneapolis, St. Paul that I thought would be everything everywhere. And there's like 3 spots that I really liked flying him, and we tried them all. And, but it was just it was a pretty incredible experience. So he was one of these little birds that, everybody always goes, oh, they bring it back to you. And he would go out and catch a sparrow and come back and eat it on the fist. And, by no intentional training of my own, just happenstance, he learned it. So,
well, I think you said something key in the beginning of that, though, in that there's been a couple, like the 1 or 2 birds, the one, like, for example, the one kestrel that I flew that I was telling you about that, I ended up getting like 223 starlings with in like a month and a half or something like that, because she was just on fire and stuff. It's kind of strange. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like sometimes the birds that you find in hairy predicaments that you do end up nursing back, they tend to want to perform even more and have almost a little bit different relationship with you than like some just super fat, whatever bird that's, doing just fine and whatever. It's like the ones that you nurse back to health a little bit more or get. So that kestrel was trapped in a warehouse. And whenever I ended up getting her, she was really low,
Mhm.
and ended up bringing her back up, and
Cooper's hawk was too.
And well, and that's
Same
the
thing.
That's what I'm getting at.
4
is-
days in a warehouse, no food or water. So
Yeah.
when he came out, it was like, he was desperate.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just because they see extra value in you because they know they're about ready to die innately, or
Well-
if it's just that initial desperation that speeds up the the manning process.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all of that stuff. I mean, fear, the brain bone is connected to the stomach bone,
Mhm.
100%. And, do we want to starve these birds, and do we want to, you only want to take them down as far as you have to.
Mhm.
But when you go through an experience like that, you can't deny how, it's, the person who catches the fresh passage red tail, and there's the hero shot, and the bird's going mouth open, and, the hackles are up and the wings are out, and, all you're doing, great. I mean, it's great. It's exciting and everything. All you're doing is setting yourself back, creating negatives. Luckily, red tails are forgiving.
Mhm.
That's why we use them. But you already automatically have to do more work than you should. And, carry a towel. Walk up holding the towel up. Hide your body, hide your face, hide your hands. Don't talk. Get the hood on the bird, wrap it up, whatever. And avoid the negatives. Like, why put yourself through that? Why put the bird through that? And then, hood it, have it hooded, put it down on a perch. Don't touch it until it's pooping green the size of a dime straight down, right? Because you can mess with it. And yeah, red tail's forgiving, but, we don't practice this manning stuff from wild birds that often. Even people who fly only passage birds and do it well, it's the least practiced thing you're going to do is that taming phase. And so it needs to be the most valuable. And, don't mess with it just because you have it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
we're people.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just as guilty as anybody else.
sure. Well, and a lot of it depends on how you're taught to, and like I said, that's why it's so valuable. Especially after once you get out of your apprenticeship and you start trying to branch out into new things, and that's why it becomes more valuable eventually to start getting not just any opinion, but just opinions from people that or find out to be reputable after you spend some more time with them and see how they fly their birds and things. And yeah, I mean,
it takes a tribe.
Yeah.
And
There's
as Robert Bagley says, we are a goofy little tribe.
Yes,
but
yes,
it's
we are.
wonderful.
Yeah, there's 100 different ways to skin the falconry cat, so to speak, in that regard. But
Well, the thing about opinions is, everybody has one.
sure.
The thing about, the only thing that two falconers can agree on is that the third one's doing it wrong, but they don't agree how to do it right either.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And that's just everybody's personal experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
You ask 10 different falconers, the same question, you're going to get 100 different answers.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, well, I mean, and like I said, we've already kind of brushed on how you got into it because you were born into it,
Sure.
and it's your introduction into it is definitely not typical, and there's a lot of guys that sometimes even that are, whose parents were in it or whatever, still technically don't even get super in it until they're even older,
Sure.
So
Well, I mean, I've got an older brother and a younger sister, and we always, when we were really young, we did the NAFA meets as a family, and then, as we got older, my brother, he always did the NAFA meets as he got older, but he never really got into falconry. He flew some rehab birds, and he took a stab at it here recently in last, I don't remember when, 10 years or something, 5 years ago. And he got his license. He got a bird, went through the whole thing, and he'd done it. But he didn't when he was younger. And, my sister, once she was probably in her early teens, it was no more NAFA mates, it was over for her. And she definitely understands it and appreciates it, but it's not her thing. And for my brother, it's been a questionable thing. And for me, it doesn't feel like there's ever been a choice. Like there has never been a question of if, right? And just NAFA meets they've been the thing you do. And, this was always going to be a deal, and don't know it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. And that kind of goes back. I mean, that's another thing we could talk about probably for another, 3 hours is the debate there between, is somebody really born to do this, or is it, kind of a thing where, people just for whatever reason fall into it, or however they're introduced to it. It's just you just never know.
Well,
But,
it's like I said earlier. I still feel like an imposter at times, and I wonder. I've had this thought a lot. It's funny. I mean, would I even be a falconer? Would I even know about it? Would I see it at a distance and be interested in it? I have no idea. I wonder that I might not be. I tend to be fairly obsessive in the things that I do, and whatever it is, whether it's falconry or hunting, archery hunting or snowmobiling or any of these things, there's no halvesies. And would I be too inundated with some other obsession in life to be able to do something like this? I don't know.
Well, I mean, about the other obsessions I have in my life, and if I wouldn't have had just a random conversation at a random time and kind of stumbled into just finding out that it was the thing, I mean, there's no way I would be.
Was it the fact that conversation was at the right time? Was it timing as much as it was the content?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, because and I've had this conversation many times with people too, than that if I would have known about it earlier in life, I might have known about it, but there's no way I've been able to do it.
Sure.
No, logistically speaking, there's just no way in hell.
Right.
There's literally no way in hell.
It might have been easier though, because it was a lot cheaper, and it was way. I look back on falconry in the '90s and stuff like that, and even the late '80s and the '90s and 2000s. It looks so much easier in hindsight.
Well, and the thing is though, is I would have never had the time, and any younger, especially up into my early 20s, I wouldn't have been able to do the nature side of it.
Sure.
Because, I mean, I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but like I had violent allergies, like my whole life, literally up into my early 20s until I decided to finally get allergy shots for 5 years.
You just have to wait till it snows.
Yeah. Well, it didn't matter.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally, when I got tested for allergies, my allergist looked at me. And so the initial conversation was, "Oh, you forgot to not take your Allegra." Like, okay, well, this might not work. We might have to just bring you again, whatever. We're going to just try it anyway. Within like not even 5 minutes, both of my arms were completely lit up like Christmas trees.
Jeez.
Yeah, literally, like I had +2 to +4 whelps on all but 3 things they tested me for. And he looked at me and he was just like, "Oh yeah, well, you were the person that these were invented for."
Your mom and dad are like, "Hey, it's time to go outside and play," and you literally want to just die and stay inside. It'd be better than going outside.
I literally could not breathe through my nose, like almost like the first 22 years of my life. So could you imagine me being out and beating brush? I mean, no,
not
me
in
either.
100 years. Yeah.
Me either. I would have died. I mean, it would have been miserable for me.
But so then, is it controlled now, or what?
I mean, it's fine now.
Some people grow up and just grow out of allergies.
No. I like I said, I had those 5 years of allergy shots, and after that, it was fine.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit later, it started kind of creeping back a little bit, but then I started just taking Nasacort, and ever since I've taken Nasacort, I mean, it's fine. I've got no issues whatsoever, none.
Interesting.
And yeah, so I mean, literally before I was like 30, which is right around the time that I, 30, 31 ish or whatever, is about the time that I kind of discovered that this was a thing. Sure. And up until then, there have been, I mean, yeah, and then like the gap between like 22 and 30, I was still really pursuing music. So there's yeah,
and that takes the level that you're playing bass at and stuff takes full commitment. So
yeah. Anyway, I mean, so no, it wouldn't have happened for me any earlier.
Well, and there, it's funny because even within falconry, there's so many things that are, you come to these meets and you have there's experiences and there's things that go on at these meets that you just can't really describe to people who don't come and participate. And it's coming here and coming a few days early, staying a day or two late, hunting your way in, hunting your way out, whatever, and giving yourself a full commitment and immersion where everything you do, everywhere you go is a falconry conversation for a week. And it leads to those same breakouts. The same discovery for you of finding falconry happens for you as a falconer when you can have these kinds of interactions with people face to face, and the diversity of those people that you meet at something like this, it just you can't put a price on it. And the epiphanies of animal training or animal behavior and ideas and tactics and things to try and whatever. I mean, it just grows and grows and grows. I mean, I'm, middle-aged and doing this a long time, and I have had the thought and even the conversation with quite a few people that, like, there's so many ways to do falconry. And to this conversation we had earlier about, like, it's tighter and tighter. The squeeze is the juice worth the squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I still look at the possibilities of what you can do with falconry, depending on the raptor and depending on the quarry part of the country you live in. And it's endless. It is completely endless.
Well, and that's why, like, I'm just happy that I just happen to love kestrels, and I also happen to love squirrel hawking. So for me, I don't really feel the pressure of, like, the inevitability of it all.
Sure.
Because, like, worst case scenario, if I'm hawking if I'm just hawking a passage red tail,
Mm-hmm.
and then transitioning back to a kestrel in the spring, and that's all I had for, like, the rest of my
Sure.
falconry career. I mean, I'm glad I've discovered the things that I truly do like and enjoy and just have pure fun doing now.
Yeah.
I wish I would have even discovered it earlier.
Mhm.
The kestrel, I mean, I did early, but, like, the squirrel part, I wish I would have, really given it more of a chance even
Sure.
earlier.
Sure. I can tell you haven't flown a goshawk.
Yeah. Oh God.
It changes things.
Yeah. Well, we've had that conversation too.
Oh, I know.
The time might finally be coming soon for me to at least try going to the dark side for a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that all works out. But yeah, man, no, as far as everything else goes, though, I mean, I do want, before we get too much further, or, we probably am going to have to start looking maybe wrapping this up before too long. But before we do, share one of your more memorable experiences as far as flights, birds or whatever. And like I said, I know you're another guy that's been doing this for a long time, but
There's a lot. I think probably kind of have to segment them out by category of which bird or, like, what type of quarry, because
go for it.
I'd have to say I definitely could come up with a top 3, but man, they're competing hard with the top 10 or 15. I mean, they're all, depending on the topic and the person you're talking to who might understand it or not, there's just something insane, incredible, just jaw-dropping, inspiring about longwings and upland quarry. I mean, I'll catch pheasants all day, but I hate pheasants. And I'm a big fan of native quarry, and I give Hungarian partridge get a pass on that because they're just unbelievably good sport. And I think they're way more difficult than a lot of people think. But, longwings, the North American style of flying longwings in the American West is just kind of bonkers that it's a thing. And, when you see a lot of upland flights and you see what the falcons do and how they progress, and, taking a bird and flying it for a few seasons and things like that is really unbelievable. When they develop in that environment and they acquire the skills they need, and then you're years into flying a good bird that you just have this incredible working relationship, and you have this unspoken communication, whether how you're acting in the field and how the dogs are working in the bird reading and understanding up above where you can't find them, and they know exactly what's going on below. And probably the last, I don't know, I flew the boys, from 2014 through 2018 or something like that. And, I was very lucky to know Kenny Sterner and live pretty much with him for a couple summers when I worked for Bob Berry. And then when he died, I got the boys and flew them, and they were pretty old. They were 14, and they were made birds, so it was kind of a cheater jumpstart, but they were pretty old and hadn't been flown in 7 years. And what they ended up, I mean, I learned, sure, I knew about flying long wings, but I got to really cut my teeth in Montana flying them. and there was a lot of flights with them that were firsts for me, and just seeing it happen and creating it myself with my first bird dogs and my first couple English setters that I had, and having the whole team work out together. I don't even know if I can pin on one. I mean, there was one day where my friend Mark Bolton and I were down in Southwest Montana flying sage grouse, and we had Ray caught a boomer from, I don't know, probably 800 or 900 feet, and like headshot it and dropped it. And then Tom hit a hen, broke her wing 100 feet in the air and just tumbled it. And Mark's peregrine Ivy, which she's still one of the best peregrines I've ever seen fly. And she did the same thing. She just cut one out of the sky, And so we have hero shot of 3 birds on a cadge and 3 grouse. And I mean, we tried that. I don't know how many times we went and flew those 3 birds together in that area, and one, none, one, just never, the stars never align like that, So that was a pretty incredible day. There, and awesome experiences, but then there was always a little bird chirping in the back of my mind, like, well, you didn't raise these birds yourself, and you took them out and flew them, and it was really an honor to fly them for Kenny when he was gone. And but then a couple of years ago, raising a female gyr, hacking her, turning her into a game hawk, and her first head of game was a sage grouse, and she caught a few that year. But then the end of her second season, before I decided to put her up for breeding, we had Joe and Alyssa were out visiting, and we were out hawking, and we had driven around all day. I mean, I wish birds came with a gas card. I don't even want to imagine. I don't even want to even think about totaling up the amount of gas that it takes to cover the country we live in. And we'd packed up. Lauren was with, and a couple falcons and a goshawk, and we were driving around all day just trying to find a slip. And it was like sunset. Hadn't seen anything for like 6 hours, and all of a sudden we bumped a group of grouse, and they flew across this valley, and there was mud, unusually warm winter conditions, and the roads were mud, and everything was a swamp, and the hilltops were dry, and we hadn't been looking up on these hilltops much because we just couldn't get to them. And these birds all flew half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, marked where they put down the hillside, and got Hannah out and put her up, and we had a good 1/3 of a mile stomp through crusty snow and no dogs, and it was sunset, and we always flew her late, but she rang up, I forget, something over like 900 feet, and we got into the grouse and bumped them, and the group, I think it was about 10 birds, left, and she was on her way down. She was in great position, and you could hear the stoop, and one boomer got up, I don't know, 4 seconds after the rest of them. He had waited behind, and she was coming down, and she switched targets from the group to that thing, and she smashed that thing out of the sky like 25 feet in front of all of us, or maybe it was 25 yards. I don't really remember, but it was
close enough.
Dude, it was like a baseball bat hitting a brick wall, and I mean, there was a cannonball divot in the snow where that grouse hit the snow, and I mean, shattered wing, just like a couple pieces of skin tissue hanging that thing on. And I was like, that was her last game flight, and she's been in the chamber since, and I spent the last 2 seasons crying, looking at her in the chamber, wishing I should fly her again. So, it's just incredible. Yeah. And, if you start talking about goshawks and stuff, there's just so many flights, and probably the most incredible goshawk flights I've ever seen were that bird Minnie 2 years ago. And we were trying to fly sage grouse with her in the evenings, and dog on point, group of grouse gets up. It's getting pretty dark. They fly high. They're skying out and leaving town. And when I say that, they're flying over the mountain, and she blasts off the fist and goes low, and they don't know she's there, but they're still flying. They're pressed and they're flying hard, and 200-300 yards out, they are they're skylined above the horizon in the sunset, and she's flying, and all of a sudden she shoots up out of the dark below the horizon and smashes into a grouse. And she never caught one. She did it 6 times and lost them tumbling down. I don't know what happens, but I got over there every time, and she never had the grouse.
Yeah.
And just bonkers top speeds and flying and tenacity, and just a very fit goshawk in the heart of winter. And all the things are hitting at OGOS 30 between training and fitness and cooperation with the dogs. And, she should have caught 20 of those things doing that. And somehow she just never hung on to them. I don't really understand it, but they were some of the most spectacular flights I've ever seen. So,
Well, it's not like sage grouse aren't, small or anything.
Yeah.
So whatever. So
yeah, but
big.
she was a big goshawk, and man,
Yeah.
for as much as she got her talons into me and didn't let go, I don't know how that happened.
Well, that was you though. I mean, if sage grouse maybe were covered in human skin, then
she might have done better.
it might have been a little different story.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many flights I can't even imagine. I mean, I know all these falconers that have done this for 50 years. I don't know how the brain works. You can recall. You start drilling back down, you can recall everything. Little shiny side up for sure. But I mean, that Passage Coops I had that was some of the most fun. I mean, I flew him here in Kearney in 2010 or something. I mean, we were chasing bobwhite quail with him, and he caught everything. He had just the most amazing dog fights on little birds and stuff like that, and I can't put one over the other. I can't pick a top one. They're just all these unique experiences and all these individual birds and all these individual things that happen, and the friends and the mentors. Shout out to Kurt Rusenbeck, Minnesota longtime falconer that was a very strong mentor of mine beyond my dad. And I've gotten more good advice from him and the Cooper's Hawk thing, and continued that friendship for a lot of years. And there's just a lot of people like that. I could name a lot of names, and it takes it takes a village.
Yeah.
So
No,
we
for
don't
sure.
do this alone. As much as it's a personal pursuit and you do it on your own, it's a lot better with friends.
Oh yeah, for
So-
sure. Yeah, you won't get any argument out of me there.
Yeah.
But well, cool, man. I mean, we can probably go ahead and start to wrap this up then. But I mean, because there will be another time probably. I know I'll rope you in for a part 2 at some point.
Sure.
And maybe we can get your lovely wife in, to partake in that one also.
Sure.
Do a group one or something. And but yeah, I mean, before we close though, what do you think? I mean, I always ask people for their best piece of advice that they can pass on, to current and prospective falconers. And I mean, we've already, what's cool about these is, there's always little bits of wisdom that are dropped throughout an episode, but like,
Sure.
so I mean, you've already shared some, but what do you think is one of the more important pieces of advice that you think you pass on?
I think there's 2 really important things that have become really clear to me in the last maybe 5 or 6 years of doing this. And that is, number 1, I think this is probably one of the most important things to be applied across birds, dogs, circumstances, lifestyles, whatever. Play your own hand. Play your birds, play the bird in front of you, train the dog in front of you. Don't do them the disservice of lumping them into, oh, it's this kind of bird, or it's this size of bird, or it's this species of bird, or they can and can't do this. Do what you want. But, make your own goals, come up with your own stuff. Do, they talk about a good falconer flies the bird they have the best quarry for. Yes, but it's fun to see what you can get away with too. Or what else could work. But in doing so, respect yourself and respect the process enough that you don't talk to other people so much and come up with a false idea or expectation that takes you away from doing what's best for the situation in front of you. It's kind of like when you talk about people talk about recipes for training birds and stuff like that. Recipes are dangerous. Calling it that's dangerous because it implies that you put in these ingredients, you get a cake. Well, here's the ingredients. Here's the how-to list. 12 people do this, and 12 people get 12 different birds. And it's because it doesn't account for your individual personality, your bird's individual personality, your individual lifestyle, circumstance, and how that all plugs in. There's nuggets of gold in everything. Everyone's process, everyone's how-to might work for you, it might not. There's definitely things you probably will use from any of it. But it's really, really important. It's just really, really important to play it on an individual basis and circumstance. If you can drop the expectations and the hopes, because I'm as guilty of this as anybody. I mean, I have like, I'm going to get this bird and it's going to be this size. It's going to be this color, And I mean, I've come to figure out like, I don't care if it's pink with purple polka dots, if it's got a great brain and it does what I want and we can work together. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what color it is. Sure, it's fun to have a pretty bird. Don't get me wrong. But you got to deal with the individual thing in front of you.
Sure.
The other one would be, I spend a lot of time looking retrospectively at what goes on. So I have goals, I have plans, I have steps. Every bird has to go through 37 steps to get a bird trap trained flying free, let's say. Whatever the number is, it's probably more like 1,000. But you got to touch them all. But some birds are going to let you work through 3 steps in one day, and then it might be 1 step in 5 days. And that's back to that individuality thing. But in going into training and working with the birds, I tend to go through a training session with a goal in mind, and we see what happens. And then I look back on it and I think, okay, well, what did the bird learn? I try to really try to understand and take on the perspective of what is the bird learning, seeing, feeling. I'm intending this, but is that what got through? And a lot of times you don't know until the next time you work with the bird, or the 5th time, right? Like you start a thing, you do it, and then, do it again the next time. Okay, I think it's sunk in a little, move on down the line. And you have the loose framework. But if you're doing it well and doing it to the best of your abilities and to the individual that you have in front of you, you owe them the respect of trying to understand their perspective and looking backwards, which will help you move forward. If you can look back on what you did with them and understand completely maybe what they were getting out of it versus what you were intending them to get out of it, then you're starting to understand how to communicate with that animal. It's little things like I'm flying a long wing, and if you're pumping and climbing, I'll walk. If you're not, I won't. Over time, they figure out that me walking or the dogs running equals an opportunity. Mm-hmm. I don't look at things so much like, I don't think about it in terms of rewards like they get the pheasant. I look at it from the opportunity to get the pheasant. I think that's a little better explanation of how predators work.
Sure.
They're about opportunities. Yes, a reward is a good thing. Sure. Clear message. Eat the whole pheasant. But there's a lot of circumstances where they're opportunists. They try things, see if it works. So I feel like opportunities can be just as powerful as rewards. So,
one thing leads to another.
Yeah. So, but I think trying to understand that individual and trying to understand what is sinking in for them, not just, they jumped to my fist, on to the next thing. Little more retrospective stuff.
Yeah. Well,
it's not always necessary either.
Well, sometimes we can think ourselves into oblivion.
You get a couple hand-me-down goshawks under your belt and you'll start to understand that too.
Secondhand Harris Hawks too.
Well, exactly. Yeah. How many of those things are training the falconer versus the other way around?
Dude, I've learned more from the last 2 like secondhand Harrises that I've flown.
Yeah.
The hard lessons, some of them, than I have a lot of birds that I've flown. Calm
honestly, calm seas don't make a good sailor.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you don't need to drown either.
Sure. Exactly. Exactly. Well,
I haven't learned that lesson
yeah,
yet.
yeah. Well, I don't think we ever do. Otherwise, we would probably just stop doing this.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, words of wisdom from the Prince of Falconry, ladies and gentlemen.
You had to do that.
I did have to do that. Yeah, I did. I did. I totally had to do that. It's your payback for dodging me for 4 years.
Yeah.
But
if you were serious about it, you would have gotten me a little Burger King crown to wear.
yeah, well, yeah, the little paper, like, yeah, stapled together.
I
on
have
your
had
head.
friends show up and be like, "Here, you need to wear this in the field."
Oh, that's hilarious.
Or it's not real.
Yeah, I would have went ahead and wrapped it around your head and just stapled it to your forehead too, so you wouldn't have been able to take it off.
Use a swing stapler for
Yep,
that.
exactly.
Because I'll be running.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
well,
thank you for having me on.
yeah,
So,
man.
it's
No,
fun.
we'll do this again sometime. Probably, I don't know, next time Tool goes through Boise or Idaho Falls again, maybe, or something.
They might not be anymore.
You never know. But yeah.
I can see that world tour being a farewell tour for them, but who knows?
I think that I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but we'll just keep on keeping on with our,
Yeah, let's not dive into music
hopes,
because
hopes for our favorite bands.
yeah,
anyway.
well, if we dive into music, we'll be on to jiu-jitsu and who knows what else. So we should probably hang it up.
Probably. Well, we'll get back into the Vinter Hall and maybe grab another beer on the way. And
sure.
I'm glad we could finally get to do this and squeeze it in and stuff. And
Sure.
despite bird calamities and dog poo calamities and everything else too. Yeah.
Yeah,
We didn't even get into that story. You cleaning dog diarrhea out of your car for like 3 hours or however long it was. So
It's my old dog Grace that I had to put down this fall. She's pulling the strings on the dogs I have left, telling them this is what he really likes.
yeah, I'm
she's,
sure.
She's haunting me
I'm
on
sure.
the road.
Yeah,
So,
that's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't funny then, but it's funny now.
yeah, laugh or die.
Exactly.
You got to find the humor in it. So
Exactly. Well, all right, my friend. Well, I appreciate you again, and we'll
man.
talk. We'll do this again soon, hopefully.
sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that finishes up the first half of this episode with Jeff Reddick. Now we're going to move on to the one that I recorded with Lauren while in Wyoming. Here we go. It's nice not seeing you in like just kind of more or less sucked into a laptop screen, for once also. So
The joys of working remote.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
never not working.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of an ongoing joke for those of you listening. It's for those of you that aren't aware, and most people know what I do for a living now because I've mentioned it several times here on the podcast. But a lot of people may not realize that you've been more or less my how do we put this eloquently?
Your pimp?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You've been my healthcare pimp basically for the last year. And it's been interesting. I'm looking forward to going back to working a normal full-time job, though. I didn't know how long it'd be before I could bring myself to say that, but it's true. I'm looking forward to normalcy again. So, yeah.
I mean, just for anybody that's curious, by pimp we mean recruiter, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's what pimps are actually going to be start to be called now is recruiters. That's going to work. It's going to be the professional term.
This might be going more downhill this morning than it would have gone last night.
Maybe, but hey, that's what happens whenever you do these impromptu kind of things. And it's been an interesting road, I think, for the both of us over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, we both have taken kind of sort of similar paths. I mean, you were doing the travel nurse stuff. I've been doing the travel RT stuff. And so I mean, I'm assuming you've been pretty happy and pretty glad to be away from bedside care for a while, right?
A little bit. It allowed me, I thought falconry and travel nursing or just nursing in general would be a good schedule for a falconer. Not until you're actually doing it that you realize, working night shifts 3 days in a row turns into 4 days in a row. All of a sudden you're not flying. So being able to go to full remote has definitely been a good thing for my falconry.
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't know if I can go back. I mean, and it's weird because literally every time I have said this so far in the last handful of years of my career, I've literally done exactly what I said I didn't think I would be able to do. where I was working in a sleep lab. I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to really go back to the actual clinical environment, right? It was literally less than 3 weeks after I said that I was working back in the clinical environment. And now that I say that I don't know if I could go back to working in a sleep lab again, well, guess what I'm going to be doing partially in this next job I'm going to be working. Yeah. And, I also have said now for years, and I haven't been in a situation where I've had to possibly go back on this either, but I don't know if I could go back to a schedule where I'm working 5 days a week. Like, was that kind of an adjustment for you? Granted, you're doing a lot of your stuff remotely now and everything, so you still have flexibility, but working 5 days a week for you, as opposed to the normal 3/12s in a week with that typical healthcare schedule. I mean, how has that been an adjustment for you dealing with falconry and everything else?
Yeah, it's actually been an adjustment for the better. I think if I was doing a 9-to-5 job in person somewhere, I don't know what I would be doing for falconry. I'd be probably flying a micro, squeezing in on my lunch break kind of a thing. But with working remote, I can't tell you how often I get yelled at by a certain falconry partner to put the laptop away. Actually, you have been a party to this week, and we're not even flying birds.
Well, more than just this week, too, to be honest.
But I mean, it's I take meetings in the field. I mean, when Iceman took his first head of game this year, a sage grouse, I literally was carrying him out of the field with a sage grouse in my hand, him on the fist, and in a company meeting. And there's kind of a joke within my company, like, where is Lauren today? So it's been a good adjustment for my falconry. It's still, I think adjustment is the key word. It's never perfect. It's never great. If I can, find that way to retire tomorrow so I can just worry about falconry, then, maybe I need to listen to more of your podcast, see if somebody has that golden ticket for me. But
yeah, I don't know if there ever really is a golden ticket unless you literally do win the $1 billion Powerball or something like that and can afford to just make your life literally however it is. But, I'm sure that there's drawbacks to some degree with that as well, although I would like to have that problem. I'd like to understand exactly what the problems would be with that scenario. But yeah, with me, I found that, if it wasn't for the fact that I, number one, worked nights for the better part of the last decade and also worked 3 days a week, I don't think I would have been able to really do this as to the standard for myself. We had this conversation earlier. We'll talk about that in a minute, but the standards I've set for myself, I don't think I would be able to live up to them. And that's one of the lessons that was kind of reinforced. And I almost kind of had to relearn a little bit over the past 3 years for myself, was if it starts to feel like work and it becomes a hassle, then just don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, you say the $1 billion ticket. I took a different approach. My $1 billion ticket was getting a goshawk. I was a long winger with Jeff for the last several years and swore off goshawks and things like that. But it was about finding the circumstance that was right for me to be able to fly. And I did feel like I won the lottery. I mean, I was gifted an incredible bird that I had a great time with. And, it's something had to change. And so going out long winging, which, anybody that does it, it's not that quick 1 hour turnaround where with a goshawk for me, it's like, ooh, I got a meeting at 10. It's 9:15. My duck ditch is 10 minutes away. Roll down the street, fly, grab a duck, get home, be ready for my work day. So it's just, again, keyword is adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really is that streamlined and it works out like that literally every single time, right?
Every single time. There's never been a situation that's never gone awry, ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, especially with goshawks. Yeah, I don't, I said, I've never seen anything go wrong with goshawks before.
Leave my little boy alone.
No, it's funny. Like I said, we can razz on all that we want. I mean, I was joking actually on another friend's podcast. We were talking about this little
I don't know, the different dichotomies that we have within our community and stuff,
Yeah.
and the nuances between how certain types of falconers view each other and stuff. And we had a lot of fun, and of course it was joking and tongue-in-cheek fun about other members of our community, and like, how long wingers think versus, how dirt hawkers think versus how, then there's like the goshawkers, and, it's like once you start wearing the goshawk hat, it's like, I'm better than you, and I'm so much more accomplished, and blah blah blah. And
I don't know. It might just be I'm crazier than you.
Yeah, we were joking about just the different personality quirks between all these different different types of falconers, and yeah, I mean it really is fun when you think about it, and just and I've talked about it many times before too. It's just the different. It's like you can almost tell by a person's personality what type of bird that they are going to more gravitate more towards and stuff. So, have you kind of noticed that throughout your time in falconry as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the occasional person that'll surprise you, but there's definitely certain habits that long wingers have. And I mean, outside of driving a Toyota, I mean, we as a community definitely have some stereotypes, I guess the word would be, sure. And it's, I don't know if it's that I don't know how to fit into a certain category, but it's been an experience, and it feels like a personal adjustment too. Flying a micro, flying a red tail, flying a long wing, flying a goshawk. I think you just kind of venture around and.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, there are those of us that are definitely schizophrenic in some ways. We.
Okay, so this has become the medical episode where Lauren just got diagnosed with schizophrenia by a respiratory therapist. It's on record now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. There's always shifting. I mean, sometimes it's bipolar, sometimes it's schizophrenic, sometimes it's manic bipolar. I mean, I don't know. We can go on and on about that, I guess, but yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, those of us that have worked in healthcare as long as we both have, we love to diagnose. I get made fun of a lot, in my little hunting group as well for that. There's some people I've diagnosed some friends with everything from sleep apnea to kidney infections to everything else, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, we have fun at each other's expense. And, I mean, that's part of the social aspect of it for me. Without that kind of thing, it wouldn't be near as fun.
Absolutely. We're an interesting community. I mean, part of what we were talking about before is just the relationships within the community that we have. And I find that as a small community, and here I am now bringing it back to medicine. Like, we're very quick to judge the others within our community. And it's, if anything, like sitting back on the outside. And I mean, meeting Jeff, I got exposure to some incredible parts of falconry I never would have known, incredible people in falconry that I never would have known and got to see. And it's very humbling. Everybody has that experience. I feel like you get your first red tail or, whatever your first bird is. And, you kill a few head of game and you're just like, man, I am it. I have arrived. And then, you go out in the field with somebody and their bird takes like a 1,200-foot pitch and walks around and, turns a sage grouse into a pile of feathers. And all of a sudden you're like, I know nothing.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, whenever we're apprentices and we're just trying to figure out how we're going to fit into this little niche, period, at all, I think that we all just are so, I know there's always the, how the best terminology you even want to put it, it's just a chip on the shoulder, wanting to be accepted by your peers, this, that, and the other. And whenever we meet a little bit of a success, it's like, okay, well, ultimately I think it's just wanting to be seen as like being good enough by other people. Right. And then as more time goes on, we start to realize that, and you start getting exposed to more and more different people and more different situations. And you're just like, yeah, that's not as near as important as I thought it was before. But
I think it's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you need to start at that point, and you need to have some confidence at the beginning, because I think it's like when you jump into that pool, if you don't know that that pool doesn't have a bottom to it, are you ever going to jump in? And I mean, you think falconry, I guess I should say I thought falconry kind of fit into this box, because, you know, the first time I had seen a falconer, it was Brian Payne in Indiana and Roger Chastain. I had volunteered at the Indiana Raptor Center, and as I'm talking and throwing my hands around, I'm remembering how you tell me that people get animated, and I'm like, I'm not animated. I feel like I have to sit on my hands now. Volunteering at the Indiana Raptor Center, and as a Christmas present, they said like, hey, we're going to send you in the field with a falconer. And I was just like, oh, that sounds cool. Having no idea what falconry was. We pull up behind a Harley Davidson parking lot. And out, you know, there are these two middle-aged men who get out of their car wearing jeans and chaps. And I'm like, oh my God, where am I? Where did she send me? Is this a prank? Like, am I going to die here? What is happening? Brian walks around to the back of his SUV at the time and pulls out his red tail, and I think we maybe took like 40 steps into the field. The bird's name was Omega, and she flew off, grabbed a rabbit, and it, like right then and there, it was the kiss of death for me. And then for several years, that is how I saw falconry. Falconry was just, you know, you went out in the field with your red tail and you got a rabbit. I knew people had falcons, but I didn't understand what long winging was. I just knew it was something that people did. And I was like, well, you know, I don't know that I need to know about that. And people had goshawks, and goshawks are crazy. So it's like, I just like my red tail. And then, you know, as I started to get like more and more into falconry, and I went to NAFA for the first time, it was Elk City in 2016. And it was like, wow, there's other ways of doing this. And it was just, for me, it was a big reflection, you know, where you start your falconry journey, and the things that you see from the beginning kind of shape what your view of falconry is going to look like for a while until you have that exposure. Mm-hmm. And, you know, before I said it's like a rite of passage, I think you need to start and you need to get some confidence. Otherwise, it's like, how am I ever going to accomplish anything?
Well, and to that note, I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot more adversity initially than others. I mean, some people, and, you know, I mean, I still think, personally, it's just as much of a blessing as a curse, or a curse is a blessing, I should say, to have early success, because you start to think that this is kind of how it usually is, right? Like, you know, I've had the first 3 birds that I flew happen to be just really decent. I mean, more than decent. I mean, really good birds. You know, I mean, my first 3 birds, everything went I mean, there's some bumps in the road, sure, but I mean, by most people's standards, fairly smooth. And then it didn't go smooth. My next handful of birds, you know, and I think the people that meet that adversity initially at first and struggle their first couple birds, and then they you know, have a good situation for the first time, tend to appreciate that more than the people that start off with the good more so than the bad. That's just my personal opinion, just kind of what my personal observation. But I mean, I don't know. You might have differing thoughts on that. I don't know, but
I mean, you bring up two big trains of thought for me on that one. And the number one, like kind of the discussion we got in the car earlier, is like, what is success? Mm-hmm. And I think success is something different to everybody. Falconry is a personal pursuit. You know, if you want to be the falconer that trains your kestrel to do 5 circles around you, hover, and then grab a starling, you know, and then your bird does it. Like, technically, if that's your definition of success, you are successful. And so it's about this personal journey and not necessarily comparing yourselves to other people in that journey along the way. And, you know, kind of what we were talking about before, I think this is something that we just naturally do within a small community. You're comparing yourself and what you're doing to those around you. You know, to not talk about myself for a second. My friend Celeste, she's a new apprentice, and she has her first red tail. His name is Theo. This bird, literally, like, it's a red tail. She goes out in the field, she points to the sky, takes off the fist, and he will literally soar at like 2,000 feet. And there was one day where we were walking around, he was at 1,800 feet for over an hour, just circling above us. I had never had that as with a red tail, but when Celeste walks into it, she has this beautiful innocence about it where, she hasn't seen a ton of falconry, and she gets to shape and decide what falconry is for her. And I joke with her a lot, and I tell her, like, you have no idea what you have in that red tail. Like, that bird it is amazing what he does. Mm-hmm. Does she want to take pheasants? Does she want to take rabbits? Is she going to take them from a stoop, having a soaring red tail? I mean, I never had a soaring red tail. So for me, it's flashy, it's neat, it's cool. Mm-hmm. But for her, this is her first experience. So this is just kind of how that goes.
Yeah, there's no frame of reference for her.
Exactly. And it's magical to me to see like somebody new walking in and just accepting like the beauty of this relationship with your bird and getting out in the field and seeing what it's like. But, kind of circling back, when I say like, we compare ourselves a lot with other falconers. This season, the easiest comparison for me is my friend Tyler. He has a half brother to the bird that I got. And we kind of kept in touch closely at the beginning of our seasons, to set out with these birds and see what they were going to do. Tyler and I had very different goals from the start. And if you put the same definition of success to the two of us, which is killing, 100 quail or something like that, I failed and he succeeded. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't my goal going in. I wanted to just, go after as many species as possible. Mm-hmm. I wanted neat flights. I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to learn, because this, in reality, was my first goshawk. And you'll hear me say it 1,000 times. I don't know anything, but I've learned so much. And I've also learned how much I don't know that I know what I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm learning. And, like I said, like comparing myself to Tyler, it's an easy bridge to make, because we have half brothers. We have the same species of bird. We raise them. He did a limited food association. I did a full food association with my imprint. Two different experiences right there, just in how we raise them. And then we went out and we sought to do different things. I would consider my first season with this goshawk an absolute success. We got a sage grouse, rabbit, chukar, quail, ducks, pheasant. Can't think because I can't count right now on the spot, but I got to see a variety, got to do different things, got to see cool flights in cool country. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's a success.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I'm totally on the same page with you as far as that goes. I think that, and not only were your goals completely different, your terrain is completely different. Your schedules are completely different. Your life circumstances are completely different. You can't constantly compare yourselves, with each other if you have completely different lives and lifestyles. And that's what everybody needs to remember. I mean, when you're seeing so-and-so over here catching 200 head of a game, whether it be squirrels or bunnies or whatever, well, do you have the same job as that person? Do you have the same you have the same land access as that person?
Quarry.
Do you have the same quarry? Do you have the same, and even if all of those circumstances were equal, it's still not going to be the same. It's just not. You're different people. And we all occasionally still fall into the trap of wanting someone else's vision of success. But in reality, well, you really should just be very, very real with yourself and understand what your situation is and plan accordingly, or hope accordingly, that you're going to be able to meet your own standards for your own situation. And I think that's very hard initially for people to grasp. And that's one of the biggest learning experiences for people whenever they initially get into this. But
absolutely. I mean, I think it's a natural thing to want to compare yourself to others and put your success against the success of others, because you want to be accepted by your community. You want to be accepted by your peers. Heck, I married the Prince of Falconry. Do you not understand the pressure that comes with that? Sorry, honey. Love you. I had to do it.
As he sits over in the corner brooding at the moment. Yeah.
But I mean, I have this endless book of knowledge that I get to live with. And, you know, I wrote an article in the journal about my experience with Iceman this year. And I can't tell you how many people contacted me and said, like, wow, your article is really neat. I feel inspired to go fly a goshawk, imprint a goshawk. So either I'm like the most inspirational person in the world, or I am going to single-handedly be the end of falconry in the United States as we know it. It's you know, it's funny because I had a lot of issues with self-confidence and my own success in falconry when I started dating Jeff, when I married Jeff, because everything was a comparison in our household. And I don't know where that wake-up call was one day, but it was like, wait a minute, he's been doing this literally since like he was born into falconry. I found falconry. I had to fight my way like to get into it and to find it and to experience it, get my license, and then move state to state. And, you know, when I moved to Colorado, I had to redo everything. And, you know, that the journey that I had through it, it took a lot of time and reflection to look back and say, like, my journey is my own. And my own journey isn't, you know, and some people might look and go like, hey, you're a total joke in falconry and you've got a husband that's going to tell you everything you need to know and he'll just fly your birds for you and he trains all your birds. I've literally heard that. I've had people tell me to my face that like, oh, well, you just fly the bird that your husband trained for you. Okay. Like, I think part of it's like picking your battles, but it's, you know, we have such an interesting dynamic in our community. And it's, I guess my point of like bringing up some of that is that it's not, if anybody's new in falconry and listening to this, it's not, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. You know, focus on what it is that you want to do. Find the people that are going to, you know, be your cheerleader and carry you through it. I married my cheerleader. You know, he is the one who brought me back to like wanting to do falconry the way I want to do it. He inspired me to find what falconry was for me and do it. And I never knew that would have been a goshawk. Like, this is the most fun I've had. Literally, I've had Merlins, and I love them, and they were great. Astrid, or Turd, if you know her. She was my first imprint, and I had a ton of fun with her. And it's just, I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't know anything, but I am learning everything.
That was your peregrine, right?
Yeah. Turd is my peregrine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like I said, I agree. You know, I mean, we had, like I said, this conversation, you know, like for a good half an hour before I was just like, you know, this is probably something that we should be recording. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very easy to think that you might know what someone else is experiencing or going through, and then like you find yourself occasionally being, for lack of better terms, judged, or, you know, someone else has their opinion of what you're doing or whatever. And then you realize, oh, well, I was just doing that maybe, and I probably shouldn't, you know, and it makes, until you're on both sides of that fence, you can't really appreciate like how you should probably readjust your own mentality or routines or just outlook. I know for me, it's been a big deciding factor in how how much I want to, I guess, put myself out there. Like, I do this podcast, and I decided that, you know what, like, the people that are a normal part of my life and are part of the people that I share my experiences with and stuff, they're going to know what I'm up to. And the rest of everybody else, it stopped being important to me years ago, how everybody thinks I'm doing or not doing. Therefore, I don't really feel like I need to go out of my way to share my successes or failures, for that matter. They are what they are, and I learn from them. You know, like for all my, you know, experiences and for all my sins, so to speak, you know, I mean, they're mine, and I don't feel the need for everybody to know what I'm doing all the time anymore. You know, early on, I think everybody goes through, like we talked about, like, everybody wants to overly share everything, right?
Every single head of game, every rabbit, every squirrel, every.
I got over that a long time ago.
And, my contribution back to the overall community is what we're doing right now, and so past that, everything else is mine. I don't feel the need for everybody to know about all that anymore, everything else, all the other side stuff. So, but that's what I decided for myself. And so basically, it's just one of those things where everybody figures out eventually what their little personal road is going to be. Some people still want to continue to share everything. That's their business. Other people decide that they want to be a little bit more private, and that's their business too. In
my case, I think it's lazy. I
well, and
I don't have the
too.
energy to post everything all the time, but I also love it.
I don't have the time.
Well, there's that. But I love it when other people post because, I get to live vicariously through them. In a way, it's like, wow, that's such a neat thing that they did. And it's so cool. But it's like we said before, like your journey is your own and falconry is a personal pursuit. And, what is it to you? Like, do you want to be the best stuffed bunny hawker you've ever met? Okay, I judge somebody for that. They aren't just flying stuffed rabbits. But, if it is what you want to do. I brought up my friend Jeremy Kessler. Like, in my eyes, he's an incredibly successful falconer because his dream and his vision was completely different than anything I've heard from other people. He wanted to take two different species, raise them together, fly them in a cast together, and have them breed together and make babies and fly their babies. And he did it. And I just think that is the most incredible thing. And he went out there and he did it. It's not the most common goal. It's not a head count goal. It's not a quarry goal. It's his personal journey in falconry. And that inspired me a lot to be able to see that. And I think there's endless opportunities within falconry. Maybe not so much anymore in terms of like the quarry and the things and everything coming, I don't want to say to a close, but falconry is changing for all of us. And the possibilities, I guess, are endless. It's like I said at the beginning, this pool that doesn't have a bottom. And when you begin, I think it's a good thing to be a little cocky, I guess, and a little not cocky, just a little confident and like feel like you succeeded in something, because in a way, at least for me, it made me hungrier to want to see more and do more. And then in doing so, it wasn't an overwhelming like, oh my God, there's so many possibilities and this is endless. What the heck am I going to do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know something else that I learned really early on, at least from my own perspective, was that it was also like, it also is going to mean a lot more if you just kind of stick to your own business, fly your bird. And it means a lot more whenever other people like kind of tell you how good your bird is and stuff. Or
that's always fun.
When other people talk about like how well you're doing and things like that, versus you offering that up yourself.
I'm not going to lie. It was really neat having people approach me about ice. I'm talking about this like everybody knows who Ice is, but Iceman is my imprint goshawk that I raised this last year. Iceman or Val Kilmore. And if you don't get that, please don't talk to me. It's really, really sad. And lots of like eye-opening experiences, learned a whole lot. I brought him to the NAFA meet and, I raised a goshawk that snuggles, literally, like on our way out of the field. He takes his head and he tucks it up against my neck under my chin and literally nuzzles his way in there on our way out of the field. And I can put my head on his back and he's like totally cool. He will ride on my lap in the car, can fly him free without a glove. And that's more so because I'm stupid, not because it's like a flashy, like, look what I can do. It's like, oh crap, I dropped my glove or I lost my glove. Okay, well, I'm still going to fly him. Mm-hmm. Or at the NAFA meet, got in the field and 26, it was supposed to be 8 people. Ended up being 26. And there's people from all over the world because it was the IAF meet. There were selfie sticks in his face. And I think I was starting to find his tolerance limit that day. But, later we went out in the field with another large group of people and he was literally party hunting. He was, flying from other people's fists to chase pheasants. And, we didn't catch a single pheasant, but you know what? that for me was like one of my most successful days, because it's like, holy crap, I shaped this bird that's going to hunt with anybody, around anybody. You know, it was like 18 or 20 mile an hour winds. Snow was blowing sideways. The weather was awful. But like I walked out of that field like with a smile from ear to ear, because it was like, holy crap, that was so much fun. It was so neat. I mean, if you're not having fun in falconry,
There's no point in doing it.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, really, like falconry can be torture.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, it's just I learned early on that it's just true success is like, you know, just like you said, different from person to person. But if you are having quote unquote success, it means a lot more if other people are talking about it more than you.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what
I forgot. That's what I was talking about before. After that, I had a lot of people approach me and say like, wow, that's so neat that you did that. Or, hey, that's really cool. Or, hey, I really want to see ice fly. I've never had that before. I had a couple people who wanted to see turd, but it was because like, you know, Jeff talked her up, or, you know, it was people who had never seen falconry, you know, want to see it. So it was really neat to feel this acceptance within the community. And there's also a little bit of like the selfish, like, I think most people know, like, I did this. I did this one on my own. Doesn't mean I didn't have help. Doesn't mean I didn't have guidance. I mean, Steve Lehman, God, that poor man probably must dread when my phone number comes across his phone with another question. But I mean, it was a really neat thing. And it was a little bit of like an I have arrived moment. And not necessarily like I'm one of the greats, I have arrived, but just like, hey, like I did this. And other people see what I'm doing as like a good thing. And I'm not the one that it's like, oh gosh, here she is with a bird. She's pet keeping, or, you know, whatever. And so it was an eye-opening like journey. I also learned about myself with this bird, and having other people see what you do and either approve of it or talk about it to other people, or you hear people talking about your bird to other people. I'm not gonna lie, like there's an absolute selfish, like, I'm so cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody, you know, there's always some percentage of ego that's involved in a lot of what we do. I mean, and some people are much better about tempering it than others, and, you know, keeping it at a reasonable amount than others. But yeah, I mean, there's nobody else, I think, that should be a bigger critic or a bigger, I don't know, chastiser or judger of what we're doing than ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever you start to kind of lose sight of that, I think is whenever you start kind of having some issues personally. I mean, I just think that, and I think honestly that there's as good as a lot of the other aspects of the socialization is. I mean, there's also there's something to be said too for having for having a lot of this be just your own, you know, also, and not shared with anybody else. You know, I mean, there's plenty of people that don't like sharing their personal falconry with anybody else because they think it's their personal thing, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But
it's also a generational thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in the age where we share everything and it's on the internet. And
yep.
I mean, you got to talk to Brian Much earlier. And I mean, the thing, like when I look at like Brian, like I can't compare myself to that man because he never has a bad bird. That can't be coincidence, right? That or, dude, where are you getting all your birds? Because I need to find those. And it's,
well, and that goes back though that, you know, your definition of a bad bird is completely different from somebody else's definition of a bad bird. You know?
That's fair.
I mean, once again, it all goes back to the root of it all, and that perception and, you know, reality. You know, why I hate the term or the saying perception is reality, because I think it's BS.
But it's true.
But I mean, the thing is like, you know, what you think somebody is doing or the reality of someone's situation may not be what you think it is all the time too. So,
and that's the other thing is you don't always know.
Yeah.
And I've definitely gone out with people and been like, whoa, that was amazing. And, you know, from my perspective, it's like the quarry and the things that I have, like going out, we went gun hunting with Tyler on quail. Oh my God, I would not last. Like, I mean, I lasted that day. I don't know how I didn't get dragged out of that field. That man stomps around that ground for hours and hours in a day.
Yeah.
I could not do that. And that's not even on my radar of possibility in terms of like the physicality of it. But it's like, I'm sure there's always going to be that thing of like, oh, well, that's easy because it's his terrain. Like, no.
No, I mean, I've done it too. I was also in muck boots on his terrain also.
Oh, God.
I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah, I mean, it's not my, and I discovered, I mean, it was other reinforcement. It's just not my thing. I'm not going to knock it, and I definitely respect it, but I don't want to do that for my personal falconry. I mean, you also learn by kind of branching out what you think you're going to like and not like also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their thing, and some people are like, I just like dirt hawking. It's fun. And I remember I can't remember who said it to me. They're like, long-winging is so boring. You walk in the field, you let the bird off your fist, it flies around, goes up high, stoops, and it's done. And it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
But yet here I am trying not to be a long winger too. So
Yeah, I mean, I've a couple of times that I've tried flying long wings, and people were out. There's definitely people in my group that hate it also, and you just kind of listen to the endless bitching for a minute, and then you just move on with your life. It's like, but they're also happy to, like it's a quid pro quo thing. You help other people beat for their birds, and they endure what you want to do also. Not everybody likes what everybody's doing automatically, but if you help each other, it's just an expected thing. Like you need to reciprocate, and that's kind of where.
yeah, it strengthens the community, like going and viewing what other people do. And it's I joke with Jeff all the time, like leaving long winging, I think is the best thing for my blood pressure. And, I'm not like sitting here like, oh, I'm some super accomplished long winger. Like I had one long wing, let's be real. Like I did it for a hot sec.
Yeah.
I had fun with her. It was great. I can't handle the stress of it. It's, maybe one day in life I'll find my way back to do it, but I'm way too attached to my birds. I mean, granted, she was an imprint. Maybe I'd feel differently with a wild bird. I hope not, but maybe it'd be a little bit different. The stakes would be different, but for me, it needs to be fun. Mm-hmm. And Merlins are fun. Goshawk has been fun. Who knows? Maybe I'll find the goshawk who's not fun, or whatever. I had a kestrel. I had a blast with him. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little sick in the head because I like imprints so much, and I have so much fun imprinting birds and raising birds. And I'm still finding my niche. I'm still a baby in the falconry world. I mean, I've been a falconer for 10 or 11 years, 11 or 12 years. I don't know.
We're only a year or two apart, something like that, in our amount of vast experience and knowledge in this.
Oh, yes. Everyone, please listen up. I have something to teach you. Imposter syndrome, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, we could probably go on and on about this forever, but I mean, I hope, once again, I mean, this is something that I think everybody thinks about, but I think it's probably, I don't know, it might not be refreshing for people to hear other people discuss openly, but the reality of the matter is that everybody has these conversations, and if not conversations with other people, with themselves. And, but yeah, well, let's move on. And before we end up wrapping up and stuff, I do want to get, and I'm sure it might be from, I don't know what it's going to be from, but one of your favorite or your most memorable hunting experience or flight, or what you think has made the biggest impression on you. I mean, I think you already kind of briefly touched on it, but want to get your one memorable, impressionable hunting experience, and then come close to wrapping this up, I think.
Sure.
So.
I mean, if you know me, you know I'm indecisive, so you're going to get two.
Okay.
And the first one is, Iceman party hunting with a bunch of people. No game in the bag at the end of the day, but it was like the reflection of like, hey, I shaped this really neat bird. Like I have a friend of mine that I made because of that bird. And I don't know, in a way, it's just like, he is a connection to my community in a way that I didn't think a bird could be for somebody. And that's been really, really special. And it just had me reflect the most. And then in terms of like a flight, that was amazing. It's a tie between Astrid's first sage grouse, partially maybe for all the women falconers out there. Like, that's when Jeff dropped on one knee and proposed, was right after that over a dead grouse. Incredibly romantic. If you're not a falconer, you'll never understand. That's actually not why it was my favorite flight. It was just going and nothing. And then her first season, she took a coot. I mean, we jokingly called me the coot queen. And by this point, I think she had like 19 coots or something stupid. And it was like, oh my God, I'm a joke. And, we were walking in the field, and I mean, there were, I swear, thousands of grouse getting up. I mean, it was just constantly getting up, and she just kept remounting and remounting and remounting. And then I watched from a hill as she did like the peregrine stoop and scoop. I think she's up around 400 feet, not some super impressive height, but you know what? That was my bird that I shaped and I raised. And she was up, and she, stooped down, came up, scoop and stoop and scoop, as you call it, grabbed and just bounded that grouse and held it. And I mean, I was sobbing. I got there, and I'm just crying like a little girl over, like, she got a grouse. She got a grouse. And I was just like, this, holy crap, like this happened. And it was amazing. It wasn't a super impressive flight or anything, but it was like, it had such an impact on me in terms of like, I can do this, and this bird can do this. And it's going to be so much fun to watch this bird does. There was a doctor that I worked with, and he was from Syria. So his name was Dr. Bala. And we would talk occasionally. He's like, oh, I heard you're a falconer. I've always dreamed of seeing falconry in the West, because falconry in Syria is quite a bit different. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, you should come out with us one day. And he's like, I would love that. And I love this doctor. He was so much fun to work with, and very stylish man. He shows up to hawk sage grouse in like tennis shoes, and like I was like, we're gonna need to get you some boots. We went out in the field, and Astrid went up, and to be honest, like I don't know how high she was, but it was a decent height. Boomer and a couple hens get up and fly, and Dr. Bala is like right there. And Astrid comes in, stoops, and smacks a boomer. I mean, like right in front of his face. And so that was very cool. But then the boomer rights itself and takes off on the level. And God, I wish I knew the distance, because this is years ago. I want to say it was like 2 miles or something stupid, like out of the sage and into the farm country where there's eagles. So my heart is in my throat, and I'm running, and Jeff is like, stop running and get in the truck. So we're following her, and I'm looking at the GPS, and she is 72 miles an hour level flight. It's a second-year peregrine, and I'm like, that's it. An eagle's flying away with her. Finally get there, and there she is. Like, she had intimidated this thing out of the sage into the wheat, and just chilling there on a giant boomer. And that was just, for me, it's like, this is so cool. The stress of it, for sure, reflecting like, the success at the end, worth the stress.
Sure.
Retrospect.
Yeah. Wouldn't want to repeat it, but
not the stress part, but everything else. Like,
sure.
Take out take out the fact of like, I know there's eagles over there because there's always something for them to pick on, or whatever. It's anytime our eagles would go that direction from where we were flying, it was always like, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's always those pucker moments that we all have. And it's never easy to get used to those whenever they happen, because it tends to be a little different every time. There's always some new stressor that comes in, and yeah, I feel you. But well, I mean, I know there's still so many things that we could talk about if we had more time to sit there and just banner for a while. I mean, there'll be another time, I'm sure, and maybe at the NAFA meet or something later this year, who knows. But before we wrap up, I do want to, we've already talked about a lot of different things that could be construed as advice or whatever, but as you know, I like to always end these episodes with getting a good piece of advice for either present or future generations, just from your perspective, and we can go ahead and probably wrap this up. So,
piece of advice from the indecisive person. I mean, kind of like I said before, falconry is a personal pursuit. And I mean, you need to find what it is that falconry is to you, and you need to go after it. Unapologetically go after it. And remember that everything you know, you might know it inherently, but you're still learning. You're still learning along the way. And what I thought my personal pursuit in falconry was changed as I learned. I'm still learning. I'm never going to stop learning. And it keeps it fun. And falconry, okay, so now we're getting into 3 pieces of advice. Here we go. Falconry is not fun. You're doing it wrong. So, personal pursuit, you have to have fun and you got to keep going. And, this is more geared towards like newer people getting in. And I know, we won't touch on this one too much. Like we've talked about like women in falconry and things like that. And there's a lot of people who are hesitant to participate because of whatever it is. It's like, screw it. Get in there, jump in the deep end, have fun, go after it, ask the questions, be involved. But at the end of the day, it's your own. And in anything in life, there's going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who tell you can't. There's going to be people who tell you're doing it wrong. And you know what? You smile, you nod, you say, have a nice day, and you just get after it. It is way too much fun to leave in the bag. And I don't know. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah.
If you want, last one, I promise, last one. Don't listen to what anybody says when they tell you can't do full food association with a goshawk. Don't listen.
Well, and once again, though, I will add to that every bird is different. Every experience is different. And, speaking in broad generalities with that, sure, there's been a lot of people that have had good success with that. I actually had a recent conversation about this very thing with another person. And, once again, once one person's methodology, skill level, and just overall, experience is going to possibly be 180 degrees different in what you are dealing with.
Every bird's an individual.
Exactly. Well, and every individual falconer is different in their 100%. Skill level and their approach and their everything else. So, yes, it can be done.
I have to stir the pot before we end. Come
yes,
on.
I know. It's fun to do on occasion, but yes. And once again, just because it was successful for one person doesn't mean it's going to work out so well for the next either, though. So at any rate, on that fun note, we do have some cold McDonald's sitting next to us now. I mean, it might still be at least lukewarm. I guess we should probably eat that. And yep, our next person is here. So
that's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, kind of ironic timing. So until next time, thank you. And we'll do this again some other time.
Sounds good.